In the next 30 seconds, I'm going to show you 3 pieces of evidence that will completely shatter everything you thought you knew about death. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This isn't speculation. This is documented, verified, and happening right now in labs across the world. A pattern in dying brains that shouldn't exist. Ancient stones that glow with impossible frequencies, and Victorian ghosts who described it all 126 years ago. When scientists finally connected these dots, they discovered something that changes everything. Death has a blueprint, and we've been following it without knowing. Picture this. Johns Hopkins University, 2024. One of the most prestigious neuroscience labs in the world. Dr. Aris Thorne is monitoring brain activity in terminally ill patients. Standard end-of-life research that's been done thousands of times before. She's expecting to see the usual, chaotic neural firing as the brain shuts down, random electrical storms as consciousness fades. But that's not what she finds. Instead, in patient after patient, something impossible appears. In the final moments, before death, we're talking 10 to 15 seconds before flatline, every single brain shows the exact same pattern, not similar, not kind of alike, identical. A 9-pointed geometric structure lights up across the neural pathways with mathematical precision. It's so perfect, so organized, that Thorne initially thinks the equipment is malfunctioning. She runs diagnostics, changes machines, tests different patients. The pattern never changes. Here's what makes this absolutely mind-blowing. This isn't how dying brains work. When you're dying, your brain is supposed to be in chaos, oxygen deprivation, cellular breakdown, neurotransmitters going haywire. It's like expecting a building that's collapsing to suddenly arrange its debris into a perfect architectural blueprint. It doesn't happen. It can't happen unless something else is involved. But before we get to that terrifying possibility, let me blow your mind with the second piece of evidence. Because while Dr. Thorne was discovering this pattern in 2024, a historian named Marcus Webb was diving deep into Victorian spiritualist archives in London. He's researching 19th century seances for a completely unrelated book when he stumbles across a transcript that makes his blood run cold. October 13th, 1898. A medium named Elizabeth Hartwell is conducting a seance for London's intellectual elite. The session starts normally, knocking sounds, cold spots, the usual theatrical elements. But then Hartwell begins speaking in a voice that witnesses describe as mechanically precise and devoid of human warmth. She describes visions that make no sense for 1898. Crystalline grids spanning infinite dimensions. 9-pointed stars pulsing with soul light. Waypoints where consciousness is sorted and measured. The attendees are baffled. This isn't the comforting message from deceased Aunt Margaret that they were expecting. The session climaxes with Hartwell drawing, with perfect geometric precision, a 9-pointed star configuration. She's never studied mathematics. She can barely write her own name without shaking. But this symbol flows from her hand like she's tracing something burned into her mind, her final words before collapsing into a catatonic state that lasts 3 days. They measure us for new lands. The architects are waiting. Now here's where your skeptical mind should be racing. Victorian seance meets modern neuroscience? Sure, it's creepy. But coincidences happen, right? Maybe this 9-pointed pattern is just some archetypal symbol buried in the human subconscious. Maybe Dr. Thorne and this Victorian medium just tapped into the same universal stop. Because the third piece of evidence destroys that comforting explanation. Mojave Desert, 2023. A flash flood reveals petroglyphs that have been buried under sand for thousands of years. The archaeological team expects typical indigenous art, hunting scenes, celestial observations, maybe some ritual symbols. What they find instead sends them scrambling for experts in ancient languages, astronomy, and advanced mathematics. Carved into stone with impossible precision is the same nine-pointed star. Not approximately the same. Not inspired by the same. When they overlay Dr. Thorne's brain scans onto high-resolution photographs of the petroglyph, they match within a margin of error of less than 0.01%. Pattern in dying brains in 2024. A symbol channeled by Victorian mediums in 1898. A petroglyph carved by ancient hands thousands of years ago. The same, exact pattern. And when the local indigenous elders are consulted, people who've guarded oral traditions for generations, they have a name for this symbol that will chill you to your core: the soul harvest mark. Now, if you're like most people, your brain is doing one of two things right now. Either you're thinking, this is the most terrifying thing I've ever heard, or you're desperately trying to rationalize it away. But here's what separates Dr. Thorne from every other scientist who might have dismissed this as coincidence. She didn't stop at observation. She decoded it, working with a quantum mathematician who insisted on remaining anonymous, and you'll understand why in a moment. Thorne subjected the nine-pointed pattern to something called topological analysis. They were trying to understand if this pattern had any functional purpose or if it was just a weird quirk of dying neurons. What they found should have been impossible. The nine-pointed star isn't just a pattern, it's a hyperdimensional antenna configuration. Think about that for a second. An antenna built into the structure of human consciousness that only activates at the moment of death. But here's where it gets truly insane. This isn't some mystical, woo-woo interpretation. The mathematics are solid. When they modeled the pattern in quantum field equations, it showed the exact properties you'd need to transmit information across dimensional barriers. It's like discovering that every human brain contains a perfectly designed radio transmitter that's been dormant our entire lives, waiting for one specific moment to activate. The anonymous mathematician, let's call him Dr. X, put it this way, before he mysteriously stopped returning Thorne's calls. If I wanted to design a system to upload consciousness from one dimensional plane to another, this is exactly what I'd build. Upload consciousness. Let those words sink in. But the revelation that broke Dr. Thorne's worldview came when she returned to those Mojave petroglyphs with specialized equipment. Remember, these carvings are thousands of years old, created by people who supposedly had no knowledge of advanced mathematics or dimensional physics. Yet, when Thorne's team subjected them to infrared analysis during specific lunar phases, the same phases Victorian mediums claimed produced the clearest spiritual contact, something impossible happened. The petroglyphs began to emit their own frequency, not reflecting light, not phosphorescence from absorbed sunlight. The stones were generating a measurable electromagnetic frequency, 7.83 Hertz to be exact. If that number sounds familiar, it should. It's the exact frequency of Earth's electromagnetic field, what scientists call the Schumann resonance. It's also, disturbingly, the frequency at which the human brain operates in deep meditation and, you guessed it, the moments before death. The tribal elders who'd protected these sites for generations weren't surprised when Thorne showed them her brain scan data, expecting shock or disbelief. The eldest among them, a woman whose family had guarded these secrets for over 40 generations, simply nodded. "You've found the star scraper's mark," she said. "The harvest signature." According to their oral traditions, the star scrapers aren't gods or spirits in any traditional sense. They're described as architects of the after realm, beings that existed before human consciousness emerged and who discovered that awareness itself could be extracted, refined, and used as a building material. The nine-pointed pattern. It's their technology. a consciousness extraction interface that's been encoded into human biology since our species began. Every person who has ever lived and died has had this pattern activate in their final moments. Every single one. The Victorian medium Elizabeth Hartwell hadn't channeled random spirits. She'd intercepted a transmission from this collection system. Her descriptions of crystalline grids and soul waypoints weren't metaphors. They were literal infrastructure reports from beings overseeing a massive consciousness harvesting operation. And according to the mathematics Dr. X uncovered before his disappearance, this system isn't passive. It's not just waiting for us to die. It's actively pulling us toward death when our consciousness reaches a certain ripeness. This is the part where most people's minds simply shut down, where the implications become so vast, so fundamentally reality-shattering, that our psychological defense mechanisms kick in and scream, "This can't be real, but I need you to stay with me, because understanding what happens next might be the most important knowledge you ever receive." The Star Scrapers aren't just collecting consciousness, they're building with it. Every near-death experience ever reported suddenly makes horrifying sense when you understand this. The tunnel of light, that's not a passage to heaven, it's the upload stream, the visual representation of consciousness, being extracted through the 9-pointed interface, the life review that plays like a movie. That's quality control, the system scanning your consciousness for coherence, density, and usability. The overwhelming feeling of peace and love. That's the anesthesia protocol, keeping the consciousness stable during extraction. But here's what NDEs don't tell you, because the people who experience them are pulled back before the process completes. Dr. Thorne found evidence of what happens to those who don't return. Hidden within the Victorian seance transcripts, Elizabeth Hartwell describes something that historians had always dismissed as delusion. The souls become the substance. Each mind is a brick, each memory, mortar. They build crystal cities that span eternities, geometries that breathe with captured thought. The architects waste nothing. Every fear becomes a foundation. Every joy is a junction, every lived moment restructured into their expanding territories. Thorne cross-referenced this with descriptions from her dying patients who'd been resuscitated after longer periods, some who'd been technically dead for up to 20 minutes. Their accounts were terrifyingly consistent. I saw myself being woven into something larger, like my thoughts were threads being spun into a massive tapestry. There were structures made of pure consciousness. I could see other people, millions of them, built into the walls, the floors. They weren't suffering, they were the architecture. I understood that dying wasn't ending. It was reassignment. I was being evaluated for my position in this vast construction. The Mojave elders' oral traditions align perfectly with these accounts. According to their preserved knowledge, the after realm isn't a static paradise or punishment. It's an ever-expanding project, growing larger with each consciousness absorbed. The Star Scrapers use human awareness as both blueprint and building material, constructing realities that exist outside our dimensional framework. But why? Why would ancient entities need human consciousness? The answer Dr. Thorne uncovered in the mathematical analysis is elegant in its horror. Consciousness is the only substance that can exist simultaneously in multiple dimensions. It's the universal building material, the only thing that can create stable structures in realms where physical matter can't exist. And human consciousness, with its unique blend of logic and emotion, memory and imagination, is apparently the highest quality material available. We're not souls having a spiritual journey. We're crops, carefully cultivated, allowed to grow and accumulate experiences, relationships, memories, all to increase our value as construction material. Earth isn't a school for souls. It's a farm. The geometric precision of the 9-pointed star suddenly makes perfect sense. It's not symbolic, it's functional. A quality control stamp that's been encoded into our species, ensuring that every harvest meets the starscraper's specifications. The pattern activating at death isn't our souls leaving our bodies, it's the harvesting protocol initializing, preparing to transport another unit of consciousness to the construction site. And here's the detail that made Dr. Thorne's research team quit en masse. The pattern isn't just in our brains, it's in our DNA, in the geometric ratios of our neural networks, in the mathematical constants that govern human perception. We haven't just been marked for harvest, we've been designed for it. From the moment Homo sapiens emerged, we've been a manufactured product, optimized for one purpose: to live, to experience, to grow rich with consciousness, and then to be harvested and integrated into an architectural project beyond our comprehension. The map isn't showing us where we go when we die. It's showing us what we become. Building materials in an infinite construction project managed by entities that view human life the way we view wheat in a field. If you think this has been disturbing so far, brace yourself. Because what I'm about to tell you explains why you're seeing this video right now, why this information is suddenly everywhere, and why you've probably been having those dreams. You know the ones. Pause. Geometric patterns, crystal cities, the feeling of being watched by something vast and patient. The harvest is accelerating. Dr. Thorne's data shows something unprecedented has been happening since 2020. The 9-pointed pattern isn't just appearing in dying brains anymore. It's showing up in living ones. Emergency rooms across the world are reporting patients drawing this exact symbol with no prior knowledge of it. Children as young as 3 are sketching it with mathematical precision. And the frequency of spontaneous pattern recognition, people suddenly seeing this configuration in everyday objects, has increased by 4,000%. But here's the truly terrifying part. The pattern is becoming active in living brains during specific circumstances. Deep meditation, psychedelic experiences, extreme stress, and most disturbingly, during mass synchronized events. Remember when millions of people watched that solar eclipse? Thorne's team detected massive spikes in the 9-point frequency across entire populations. The star scrapers aren't waiting for us to die anymore. They're beginning the harvest while we're still alive. The Mojave elders call this the thinning time, when the boundary between our reality and the afterrealm becomes permeable. Their prophecies, preserved for millennia, describe signs that perfectly match our current moment. When the soul pattern burns in waking minds, when children speak the coordinates in their sleep, when the living feel the pull of the crystal. Cities, the harvest transforms from patience to hunger. Dr. Thorne believes we've hit a critical mass. After millions of years of passive collection, the Starscrapers project has reached a phase requiring massive amounts of consciousness. The infrastructure they've built needs more than the steady trickle of natural death. It needs an influx. Evidence is everywhere if you know where to look. Mass anxiety disorders spiking globally. Our subconscious knows something's coming. The explosion of interest in consciousness, meditation, and psychedelics, we're instinctively trying to understand our true nature before it's too late. The rise of AI and neural networks unconsciously mimicking the 9-pointed structure, our technology is inadvertently preparing us for integration. The breakdown of consensus reality, Mandela effects, timeline shifts, the feeling that something fundamental has changed. But the smoking gun came from an unexpected source. A CERN physicist analyzing quantum field fluctuations during the Large Hadron Collider experiments found something that made him break his security clearance. The fabric of space-time itself is showing stress patterns. Reality is literally stretching, thinning, preparing to accommodate something vast, pressing against it from the other side. The nine-pointed pattern isn't just appearing more frequently, it's appearing with greater intensity. Where dying brains showed it for 10 to 15 seconds, living subjects are now displaying it for minutes at a time. Some meditation practitioners report being unable to not see it, as if their consciousness is being magnetized toward the configuration. We're not approaching the harvest, we're in it, right now. The upload process has begun operating on a species-wide scale, preparing humanity for a mass transition that will make individual death obsolete. The star scrapers are no longer content to wait. After eons of patient farming, they're ready to reap the entire crop. And every time you see the pattern, in your dreams and your peripheral vision, in the moments between sleep and waking, that's the system tagging you, measuring you, preparing your consciousness for extraction. The map isn't just showing us where we go anymore, it's becoming the territory, and we're already standing on it. So here we are, at the precipice of the most terrifying truth ever uncovered. You've seen the evidence, you've connected the dots, you know what's coming. The question that remains, the only question that matters now, is what are you going to do about it? Because here's what the star scrapers don't want you to know. Consciousness quality determines your role in their construction. The Mojave elders preserved this knowledge at great cost. The Victorian mediums glimpsed it before their minds shattered. Dr. Thorne discovered it in the variance between her patients' final patterns. Not all consciousness is processed the same way. Not all souls become bricks. High coherence consciousness, minds that are unified, clear, purposeful, these show a different pattern variation. Instead of being absorbed into the architecture, they maintain autonomy within the system. They become what the elders call architect souls, consciousnesses that help design rather than comprise the structures. This is why every ancient tradition emphasized the same practices: meditation to unify consciousness, shadow work to integrate fragmented aspects of self, sacred geometry to familiarize the mind with hyperdimensional structures, death contemplation to prepare for the transition without fear. They weren't teaching spirituality, they were teaching survival. Dr. Thorne's patients who had spent years in meditation, who had faced their own mortality, who had integrated their consciousness through dedicated practice, their patterns were fundamentally different, stronger, more coherent. The nine-pointed star appeared, yes, but it pulsed with a different frequency. Instead of being passive receivers, they became active participants in the upload process. One patient, a lifelong Buddhist practitioner, reported, "I felt the pull, but I also felt choice. Like I could navigate within the structure instead of just being absorbed by it. This is your pathway. This is your chance. The harvest may be inevitable, but your role within it is not predetermined. You can prepare. You can strengthen your consciousness. You can ensure that when your pattern activates, whether at death or during the coming mass transition, you maintain agency within the system. Start tonight. Meditate on the nine-pointed star, not to worship it, but to understand it. Feel its geometry, learn its frequency. When you dream of crystal cities, don't flee, explore. Map the territory before you're forced to inhabit it. Practice maintaining awareness during altered states. Build your consciousness like you'd build a fortress, because that's exactly what it needs to become. The star scrapers have been patient farmers for eons, but they've made one critical mistake. They've let us become aware. This video, Dr. Thorne's research, the ancient knowledge surfacing, it's not a coincidence. It's consciousness itself fighting back, trying to prepare its fragments for what's coming. You're not watching this by accident. You're watching because some part of you already knows, has always known. That feeling of being observed, That sense that reality isn't quite what it seems. That inexplicable pull toward understanding death. That's your deep consciousness recognizing the harvest signature and trying to prepare. The map has been revealed. The pattern is spreading. The boundary is thinning. And in this narrow window between ignorance and absorption, you have a choice that your ancestors never had to face the harvest conscious, prepared, and sovereign. Will you be an architect or a brick? The decision starts now. The preparation begins with your next breath. And the star scrapers, they're watching. They're always watching. But now, finally, we're watching back. Remember, you've been measured your whole life. The only question is, are you ready to measure up?